Testing 1, 2, testing.
Okay. Calling to order the finance meeting, Wednesday, May 6th. And,
It's you.
So, do we have anybody online? No.
We have no one online, and Miss Susan comes running in. But we have no public comments at this time.
All right, so, I'm just gonna review financial statements.
Do you want me to just kind of run through them fairly quick?
Just run through them and
Sure.
anything noteworthy? I'll jump in.
Okay. To be honest with you, it is pretty nondescript. So if we look at the balance sheet comparison, there's really not any tremendous significant difference. March, you'll see our total assets went up 6.21%. That really has to do with the fact that we receive a fairly large property tax disbursement in March.
Okay.
There's really not much to talk about. That carries through all the way down to our total liabilities and equities. Again, total liabilities didn't change in any real significant way on the balance sheet. So I don't really have anything remarkable to say there.
Okay.
So when you go to report 2, if you look at our property tax revenue, you'll see for March, that was $981,000. Obviously, that's a significant distribution, which is why you see such a large change overall. You'll see in report 2 our disbursements of grant funds. Otherwise, expenses for the month, again, nothing truly unusual. Net income for the end of March is sitting at $832. Again, that's to be expected with a large disbursement at the start of the month. So I would move us to report 3, which is where we actually have more comparisons. From administrative differences for the most part, you'll see that for line 4, which again, thank you, Olga, for always making sure those are now numbered. That makes it does. I didn't realize how much I wanted it till I saw it. We are sitting at 99.15% of the budget year to date. 99.15%. Just, something to point out. We are slightly under what was budgeted. So if it's going in one direction or the other, that $22,000 difference between budget and actual, again, nothing to truly be surprised about as far as that goes. I'll stay within administrative just to point out a couple of things. There are a couple of spots in the grant funding area. We did not provide funding to the $200,000 to the North County Fire for their ambulance program yet. I'm still waiting for that. They typically send me an invoice by the end of the year. I have asked for it. I have reminded them that it does need to stay in this fiscal year. And Chief McReynolds and I don't know what Brian's title is, but Mac will, they both indicated that that will be coming. You'll see right above that in the grants, the Fallbrook Senior Center and the Foundation for Senior Care shows that they're under budget. It's really because they've changed their name. So again, that's not a real, we're not missing dollars there. So there's not really anything to be concerned about. Obviously, line 33, health district or health services and clinics under admin. We did not get signatures. We did not get clinical services aligned for this fiscal year. So that continues to carry forward this large unmet expense. Again, nothing to really worry about there. If you continue across that line on line 33 and you fall under wellness center,
you'll see that Teresa has kept it pretty tight to budget. She's sitting at 97.69. We had budgeted 154,000 in expenditures. She spent 151. So again, that just
Reiterates the programming expenses.
so nothing really to note. I just wanted to follow across on that line.
Okay.
We are slightly over in a few categories, significantly under in a few other categories. I think there was one. I wanted to make a note on, if you flip this over on the second page of this, medical records and expenses. I'm sorry, that's line 46.
That's under admin only. Each year it's difficult to actually identify exactly what that expense is, because depending on how many times we pull things, Iron Mountain may decide to charge more. We never really know what Iron Mountain is doing. But the royal we sitting next to me, also known as Raquel, has been tasked with beginning to start really denting this. So she's pulling 10 boxes at a time. And it's kind of like, surprise! We don't know what's in the box.
It's Christmas.
So this last set of boxes, you found one box that was just filled with old fetal monitor tapes?
Oh, no, we have 5 of those.
Oh, we have 5 of those.
5 of those.
And
And
Yeah.
one full box of pharmacy refill slips.
Just
The stickers, just the stickers. Kind of weird.
so the $35,000 that I budget for Iron Mountain medical record expenses, we anticipate will go down this year, 10 boxes at a time.
Yeah.
So the way it works for Iron Mountain is we are paying them to store. We pay them every time Raquel gets a request for medical records. She asks them, they send it, they charge us. She sends it back to them, they charge us. So if we say, give me my box, they charge us.
But then we're not sending it back. So we're going through these, and anything that isn't a valid medical record will end up being destroyed here.
Okay.
So you're going to see at the board meeting a request for approval of record shredding. Pharmacy stickers is what we will be shredding,
Okay.
and other miscellaneous.
Yeah.
Administrative record documents that are not related to patient care. So I just wanted to point that expense out as something that we're diligently working on. And I hear Raquel in there just laughing when she opens the box. Ridiculous.
So when you say 10 at a time, how often?
Well, this was the first full set we got.
Mhm.
Oh,
I'm gonna try to do it maybe every 60 days, 30 to 60 days.
okay.
Yeah, every couple months.
Sure.
Mhm.
And at that rate, how long until we're
Maybe
completely-
29.
Maybe, or we'll all be dead by then. There are many thousands of boxes. Now, many of them are true medical records. We know that. So what we've done is we're going through the list and we're like, office miscellaneous. That's probably not medical records. Business,
contracts.
old hospital contracts.
Insurance contracts, yeah.
Ancient.
Yeah.
So we're going through those, and then obviously anything that comes up, Raquel will ask me about it and I'll be like, no. And if we have the hint of a doubt that we don't know what it is, then we'll confirm with Alex. But right now, things have been pretty obvious that they're not needed.
No,
No.
they're not worth hanging on to.
So we're gonna work on that $30,000 a year expense.
Okay, so the actual amount that you spent
So
Or
far to
have
date
spent
is that
to date is-
23,822. So that first
Oh,
column
okay.
is our actual, and then the
Okay.
budget, and then the variance.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this year we haven't spent as much, which is
Got it.
good.
Okay.
Some years we get multiple expenses on it because we get a lot of requests. We've also been doing a little bit more of a few polls here and there.
Mhm.
So this has been a project we've long wanted to really address.
And you've also spent significantly less in legal and accounting,
Yes.
which I thought was not the case because I thought that when we went with Alex's firm.
So what I did is I budget the maximum amount per contract that we have with him.
Oh,
But because we're not using him to that amount, we end up basically getting a credit.
okay.
So that has made a big difference. And you're starting to see a very small amount, you'll really see more in the next couple amount, where we're no longer paying for our bookkeeping services with Marnie. So by having Olga on board, she's handling that in-house. Right. So she's saving us money.
Mhm.
You'll also start to see next month in the financials, some differences in salaries, which right now it's negligible. So if you look at line 62 under administration, Judith was still here. We paid her out. Her final day, I believe, was the 20th of March. So you're not really going to see the change in salaries from her departure. Same thing on the wellness center side with the departure of Bianca, who left April 3rd. And then we had Henry start April 27th. So you're going to see some little variability in salaries at the end of the year here as we start looking at those staff changes. But right now, there's not really a lot going on there. Workers' compensation, I believe, so line 65, I believe that had been an original budget error. I don't know why I budgeted 13,500. But I think I had a carryover because you'll see I did the same thing over in Wellness Center.
Yeah.
So that just inflated the expense, so it makes it really look like I've saved a ton of money. When in reality, the work comp stays pretty consistent. Again, last year, we changed a lot of our services out of Beta. We changed our health insurance out of CalPERS and moved all those things really over to SDRMA. So you're really seeing a few of those internal expenses shift over.
Got it.
For the most part, that was it. I didn't really have anything truly remarkable to talk about under wellness center expenses. And then year to date, you'll see that we're in good stead. We're actually doing quite well for that. So it's really a matter of if you have any questions.
No, I think good.
Again, it's pretty straightforward. We didn't see any big changes over the last month. So there's not really much to point out from that. So when we get to report 4 and we jump into the compliance report, which again, Susan provides for us, you'll see that we're still seeing fairly good returns on our medium-term fund, which is the one through CalTrust. The liquidity and medium-term are both there, but you're seeing a little bit of a difference in their returns based on stock market. No real surprise there. Reminder, our funds are held very securely, so you don't see the gigantic shifts that you might see in your own portfolios. Just something to recall. California class is consistent with CalTrust. LAIF, consistent. Nothing to really talk about there, since we didn't really make any large withdrawals or shifts to those. And I'll just jump on up to report 5. I'm kind of going through these quickly because I do want to talk about budget stuff. I'll be honest. Report 5 is our check detail report.
Again, I don't believe you're gonna see anything unusual there. I will take this opportunity to point out that you'll start to see this shift a little bit more as Olga is setting us up for more and more automatic ACH payments. You'll see fewer check payments.
Okay.
But that is still presented to you all when you're looking at financials and such. So we'll continue to make that clear and obvious. So the point you'll see, you know, fewer checks and maybe just a list of all the ACHs that went out in a month. But nobody new on there,
Okay.
or at least I don't recall anything new. I don't think we added any new vendors. Do you recall, Olga, that we hadn't paid before?
Well, was, yeah, we've had Diamond.
Diamond.
And
Yeah.
Sayberry, yeah, so nobody knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Between,
Yeah,
yeah, with her, she kind of
I
came
mean,
back, yeah,
like a,
and, yeah, for Terra and CRP. but
Oh,
they-
the
they-
CPR,
just-
we've already done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
just coming.
So again, not really anything on the check report unless you have any questions on any of those payments. All right. We'll jump to the credit card statement from Five Star. Again, we didn't use Umpqua, which is now Columbia Bank. Nothing really unusual here. There was a few things you'll see. Judith's card is still listed. We have since changed so that her card, we now have a card that is listed for all the district's default vendors. So that if we have another staff change, we don't have to worry about moving a credit card out under that staff member's name. So for some of the things like Vonage, Adobe, those are basic business services that we pay every month. They didn't need to be on a card linked to an employee who's no longer here. So now we have what they call a ghost card, which those things will be submitted to that account, that charge. And that way, if Olga decides she's going to win the Mega Million Lotto and leaves us, I mean, at least it's not a bus anymore, right? Something good that happens.
Yes.
We don't have to worry about trying to reallocate everything under. I believe we've got the majority of things that were being charged to Judith's account or that were under Judith's name. I believe we've got the majority of those moved now to either default, ACH, or at least Olga and I are the ones getting the email notifications on that. So we're still,
The next cycle.
next cycle, we should be cleaned up on that. There are a few things that show up once a year. Olga is tracking those down to try to make sure that we're ahead of it on
Yes, I
that.
pull all the charges from Judith for all the times from the bank, and I create pivot tables. I see every single charge, whether it's quarterly or yearly, I can track now.
So that is, she has been earning her keep more than enough on that. We'll see the same thing. We've already deactivated Bianca's card. That wasn't really something she used very often, except for programming. We'll identify how to do that going forward, since we'll now have two programming people, whether or not we have ghost cards for both of them, or just how we'll handle that moving forward. Otherwise, nothing too outrageous on here. We did move a conference on HR and benefits that Judith had been scheduled to go to. We were able to transfer that over to Jesselyn, and we sent Jesselyn to San Antonio. So we're feeding her from the fire hose.
Well, I noticed the last couple of times that she's.
We pretty much chucked her upstairs so that she could be on more webinars and addressing some employee stuff that can be pretty sensitive.
Okay.
So I'm working hand in hand with getting her on that. So we're going to transition a lot of her tasks to handle more HR and facilities, which had always been the plan.
Right.
But of course, now we've escalated the timeline on that. Same thing with Olga. We were gonna just, slowly. Now it's just pretty much, hey, can you handle this? And they're doing a great job, and we're figuring out those things. Jesselyn has had less experience, so we're taking probably a little slower movement with her. But Teresa has already started working with her to understand our basic contracting template for facilities work, so that she can start to understand that process. That will free Teresa and I up from those sort of more technical but mundane tasks. So that's part of the plan for that.
And so then as far as the receptionist duties, well,
So
just,
I told both Olga and Jesselyn that I wanted to wait about 60 days till we really saw how confident and capable they are in the shifts of those two positions, to identify whether or not they would stay that direction. If we would shift some things, that would then necessitate whether or not we hire a new receptionist. I am coming up on the end of my 60-day timeline, which was scheduled for the end of May. Teresa and I did meet this week, and we're thinking that with the goal of increasing to potentially another night of the week and another Saturday of the month for programming at the Wellness Center, which often requires one more additional person. So sometimes it's been Jesselyn, sometimes it's been Raquel to go out and support Wellness Center staff. The idea now is, since we already do that, and we're thinking of adding these extra days, if we do add in a receptionist, we'll build that position back to the more traditional format that we had, where that person is reception with expected fill-in support for Wellness Center when someone is out sick, those additional evenings, that Saturday. So that person will float in between a lot more. But I think that that should give us the padding we need for that accelerated growth and programming support. So that person has been budgeted into the budget that you'll see coming up.
got it, okay.
Okay.
Now, I guess that was my
Yeah.
thinking, because I
There-
hadn't recalled that.
No, this all
position.
happened when Artie was working on the budget, and I didn't have a plan, and then I had to change everything. It's fine,
It's all
it's fine.
good, it's all good.
That was my whiny voice.
God, you don't use it very often.
Not that you hear. Where Raquel hears me do it all the time. But I had a plan. All right. So I'll move away from credit card unless you have any other questions there. Okay. Report number 7 is our community development disbursement, and we do not have an expectation of transfer of funds for this time. You'll see a couple of new things that came up, which is the final line on the report was development costs for cameras and security at Community Health Wellness Center. We're adding another Verkada camera. So if you're walking up to building B, on the very back side, there's a camera so that you could see down that long hallway. Okay. The front side of the hallway at the very end did not have camera support. And so what we found is that when the staff is able to look at cameras, there's that very big blind spot at the end of that building. With enough activity going on and with that back garden space expected to be a teaching garden, we wanted to make sure that the space was secured. It's also the kind of the least utilized back corner of the property that has neighbors on it. So the idea was that this secures the vision around building B. I know we're just now in spring, but when we fast forward to fall and it gets dark at night, we'll still be open 1 to 2 nights a week. And we felt it was important to make sure that that area was secured. Now that classroom 6 and classroom 3, the 2 end classrooms, are nearing completion on their redevelopment, they'll be pressed into service, especially once the building A goes under construction. So again, this was something we'd always figured and planned for, so we went ahead and got it started in this fiscal year. So there's a little bit of an expense. You'll see a little bit more coming in under the April financials for that had to do with putting in some cabling
There will be some additional expense, I think May 20th or something like that, Verkada's coming out
Yeah.
to put in the camera.
Yeah.
So there'll be a few more expenses that you'll see related to that. Okay. That's more of a facilities conversation, but because you see it on this report, I thought I'd bring that forward.
And that's it for the finance reports, unless you have any other questions on those.
No.
Nope. All right.
Good.
Let's run the
Budget, look, I made it pre-graphic.
Really easy on the eye.
Mhm.
It's very easy to digest.
Right? I was just,
Jiminy. I made it in Canva and all those squares were circles and it matched a lot better. But then when I tried to bring it over into into PowerPoint, it made everything in squares, so. In case anyone
Cares about circles and squares, that's,
But isn't it weird how it does that? Just
so
flips it.
there you go. Susan's laughing because she knows exactly what I'm talking about. So we'll talk about this year's budget overview. If you hit the next one, please. So following our strategic priorities, we are focusing on the idea that we'll have enhanced access to urgent care services, more specialty medical care services, and expansion of our ongoing district lifestyle change programming. So those are the strategic priorities that are pushing the changes in this year's budget. The main change is obviously we are expecting a large expense for urgent care, which meant we will be de-emphasizing the community health contracts or grants. And that has already been discussed in this committee and
at the board, but again, pointing that out. Again, with the closure of the hospital in 2015, the number one ask we hear from community members is increased access to medical care in our area. So we're staying consistent with our strategic plan as far as that goes. Jump to assumptions, thank you. So in revenue, I'm following my regular practice of doing a 3-year average for property tax revenue. We have seen a little bit more economic volatility in the last year, and it doesn't seem like that's likely to go down anytime soon. Last year, I believe I did an 8% estimate in property tax. I dropped it back down to a 5% growth estimate just because, yeah,
Makes sense.
volatility. The assumption also under expenses is that we will have that funding support for clinical services. I have started it in July, although I doubt it will start in July. Our partner is finishing a separate project and is not likely to be able to get back to us to start anything till Q1 for our fiscal year, which is July, August, September. But it made more sense to go ahead and put that in since we may have more expenses at the start of this project. The other expense assumption is that we will see employee health benefits expense to rise. That's still a bit of an unknown. We won't typically know what that amount is until August or September. So I've gone ahead and put an assumption of an 8% growth. Judith typically
would have yelled at me and said, oh, you need to make it 12 to 15%. It's hard to know, but we knew that there would be an expense. This is a large category in our budget, but I just couldn't do it. So I stuck with 8%. District direct care programming. These are the services at the wellness center. Again, the strategic plan and priority has been about increasing Spanish language services. Teresa's launched the mindfulness program out there, expanded heart health, hypertension, diabetes, self-management, all of those programs. And now with the expansion of moving from a single Bianca programs coordinator to 2 separate coordinators focusing on different aspects of programming, that 15% increase in district direct care programming, I think, is sufficient and warranted. All right. Then we get to go to my first pie graph. We all know I love pie.
and I love pie graphs. I love my pie graph. Okay. District staff, let's start there, because again, this is a large item in the budget. So district staff salaries show an increase of 21%. This is an 8% loss in admin and a 29% increase in community health and wellness center overall. This makes perfect sense. When you're looking at the staff salaries, this isn't just 100% of me in admin.
It's not just 100% of Teresa as programming. I break those up, hence my pie chart, of their wages by responsibilities. So Teresa and I are obviously heavy in administration, but Teresa also does quite a bit in outreach and in programming. And she and I both do a fair amount in facilities, right? Raquel is almost entirely administrative because she's managing board and other district pieces, right? Olga is going to be primarily administration. Each staff member is divided basically across time or general assumption of their time in these categories. But that's why you see that this wheel is changed. So even though you'll see this decrease in admin, and yet I've added people, but I didn't get rid of, Judith left us. So that allowed her salary to be
split, allowed Olga's expense to not really hit the budget. And it allows what we would have been spending in Bianca to also then be doubled for this additional person out there. So that's why you're seeing that shift. One of the things that is required of us annually is to report our staff vacancies. This is a new law that came into play. Unlike most agencies, we generally
don't see a lot of this. Now, Olga thinks we're lying because as soon as she got here, 2 people left and we've hired a bunch of people and she's like, what is going on? And we keep telling her, yeah, but for 3-4 years before that, we didn't do anything. So I just thought I'd point that out on the record. So on, in March, we decided we would not be refilling the CAO role. We did decide, or on April 3rd, the programs coordinator position was restructured. You have the healthy living coordinator and the community programs coordinator. Those positions were posted via Indeed on the district's website and emailed to our distribution list. All in all, we had 93 applicants.
Wow.
7 were interviewed and 2 were hired.
And when did those hires take place?
The official start date for Henry was April 27, and Julianne will start May 11.
Yeah.
When will we meet them?
We've asked that they both be invited
To the board meeting,
Which board meeting?
this upcoming one.
It'll only be Henry because it's next week. Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Right, did you send her that note yet?
No.
Okay, so we just talked about it
Oh,
yesterday.
fine.
So, by the way, could you make sure that they're at the board meeting? Okay, thanks.
So Henry
Julianne. Yes.
and Henry is
He's the community programs coordinator.
okay.
And Julianne, who is an LVN, I knew you'd like that, and also already a trained diabetes educator, was ideal for our healthy livings coordinator.
Nice, okay.
And a local Fallbrookian.
That's nice. Even better.
I knew you'd like that. Okay. So let's also talk about our reserves policy. So each year we have it set that we will review our reserves. We do purpose-driven reserves, 3 really basic categories: operating reserves, emergency reserves, and capital reserves. So for our operating, we do a percent to revenue. We take a mid-range view, which is about 20% of our revenue. We figure we need to have kept in our reserves in case revenues took some tremendous hit. That's $560,479. The emergency or contingency funds, unexpected emergencies or public health crises, think again, another COVID happens and suddenly we are needing to spend money on PPE again or reallocating to support other services.
So typically that's about 10% of the budget. So this year we're sitting that at about 289,000. The capital reserve, which is capital improvements for repair and replacement of facilities, that is generally where we are anticipating contracted facility expenditures. If something were to happen, we would obviously stop anything new, but this would be anything that we would likely be contracted to have to pay. So I'm budgeting 925,000 for that, primarily because we anticipate building A will be starting through that process in this fiscal year. The other is future commitments, and that's contracts for services. So folks that we have contracted to bring services to the center during a crisis, yes, we can get out of contract, but at the same time, if there's a crisis in the community, we want to be supportive of those programs that they're already used to. So that's what gives us a overall reserve of 2.5 million. That would stay in our investment account. So we don't keep it as a separate account anywhere.
Right.
It's just the total amount that we would never allow the investment to drop below. So that's the reserves. All right. Budget comparisons. This really has to do with more of last year to this year. So our revenue changes were, I'm proposing a potential 3% decline in revenue. Rental income will likely be a small but positive offset, only because we knew that rent from last year to this year had already increased. So that was kind of a padded, I already knew it. Administrative expenses are expected to go down by 17% overall. A large part of that, again, had to do with that salary component. Expense overall will go down 6%. Administrative expenses 17%. Wellness center will go up 18%. Again, that's a major shift in spending from administration and moving it over into district programming, which is again more in alignment with our mission. Major reductions primarily has to do with community health contracts. That's down 175% from approximately 725,000 this year, down to 220,000, which is what's being budgeted for the upcoming year. Single largest cut has to do with education and conferences. We're putting that down to 185. That is obviously more discretionary funding. So staff will not be going to quite as many events. We also now have an employee that's no longer going to be receiving tuition support. And we had last year the ability to do some student loan repayment support. That law has pretty much changed. We haven't decided if we will, there's a new opportunity to continue that. That will have to be discussed into whether or not we bring that back and to what amount. Other notable increases, obviously, health services and clinics, up 17% to 600,000, presuming that that happens. That includes the 100,000 for the North County Fire Ambulance, as well as the 500,000 that we anticipate for clinical services with our urgent care partner. Employee benefits overall goes up 26%. A large part of that has to do with health insurance. The other part is that we are still working, and this is something Jocelyn is working on now, to identify a way we can move from our simple IRA to a 401k program. The simple IRA was a nice, easy thing for the district to do when they had 1 to 2 employees, employees who were more mature and less likely to need to borrow against a 401k. Obviously, with the change in the demographics and the needs and the types of employees we have, moving to a 401k makes more sense, but it's usually a little bit more expensive for it to be managed.
Okay.
So we're looking at what that will be. That will end up being something that will come to the community or to the finance committee, but that's why you see that increased budgeted in here. Maintenance and repairs increased 21%. Elevator. I have to deal with the elevator this year. And I don't like
We
it.
have an elevator.
We have an elevator. Trust me, I'd like to block it off.
Stinky elevator.
But because of the way this building was built, the elevator pit has a tendency to gather water, and that is a fine that we pay to the state. And then we also have to have it pumped. So we're trying to find some way to remediate that problem. It could be $10,000 to $15,000. So that's why you're seeing some increase in there. Overall, we are demonstrating a strong cost containment and restructuring or reallocation toward direct service delivery. And then
Some fixed benefit costs are rising despite the cuts, and that really has to do with insurance market. Not something we can really do anything about. Going over to the wellness center. They're expensive.
Spendy.
It's mostly just fun to say. Community health and wellness centers are projected to be 18% more than this last year. The main increases are salaries. That's to be expected. We increased staff over there. Employee benefits, more staff, more benefits. Again, not a surprise. Health services and clinics, we've already talked about that. More services happening there as well. Reductions had to do with education and conferences. As I mentioned, we have an employee that we're not going to be doing as much tuition reimbursement as student loan as well. Dues and subscriptions and general overall office expenses, I'm going to really get cheap on them. So they're buying all their stuff in this fiscal year, and I'm not going to let them buy anything next year. No, she just laughed at me. And the reality is,
Need a new building for all that paper, just kidding.
yeah, right. Seriously, how's the garage looking? Just kidding. So what you'll see is a clear investment in staffing and service capability, reduction in non-essential overhead spending, and overall, the wellness center is again being a larger operational focus. Our strategic takeaway is that the budget reflects a deliberate shift towards mission-driven spending. Administrative efficiency gains are funding program expenses. So we're just seeing a balancing of what we're doing. Okay, move to the next.
It's important to note that we are putting forward a planned deficit. This demonstrates our shift in strategic priorities. We're transitioning from a current year, year-end surplus to a planned
deficit driven primarily by the elimination of grant-funded contract spending, significant reinvestment in internal wellness center operations and contracted services for clinical. Again, the change in moving away from as much grant funding and moving toward specifically district funded, supported health programming, whether it's wellness center internal or external outside clinical care. Both of those come into play. The monies to be able to make that happen are coming from the grant side. So again, that's not a surprise, but it's important that we put it in writing so that when we do talk to the community, they understand where those funds are going.
Have you gotten any feedback from any of the
Not yet,
previous?
not yet.
No.
I think once they decide see whether or not they get funded and to any extent, we'll see if we get any feedback. Sometimes people aren't paying attention until it's real.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can move to, and obviously that's really easy to see. So,
Yeah, right.
what I did is in the previous meetings, I did the month-to-month budget. That isn't really as relevant. So what I've done is just condensed it to the total.
Yeah.
So the first one you have here is the actual final line item budgets. So that we can see what we're looking at. Again, these numbers match up
To what we saw in the other part of the presentation. So unless you have anything specific on the line items, I would move us over to page 34, which is the comparisons. Again, also super teeny tiny, but what this really allows us to see is the proposed and then the percent of change from fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 26, 27. So the third column is the fiscal year 25, 26 budget. The gray column to the right of that is what I'm estimating we will end at for our fiscal year 25, 26. And then you'll see the estimated change from 25-26 budget versus actual. And then the other two previous fiscal years. And this is mostly on here just to be able to see where changes have occurred, to see the math, really to just point out some changes in operations from a more longitudinal standpoint.
So I see, okay, so income, the red shows as negative, and then expenses, the red shows as.
A savings,
as
or not spending as much.
Right,
Right.
okay. And then the blue,
I just put those in there because those are where you're going to see increases.
got it, okay. Okay,
I like color coding apparently.
yeah, well, it does, it really helps to flesh it out. Okay.
So you'll see I'm proposing a budget that ends negative or in a deficit position of about $78,000. Which has varied from 44 to 180 as we've moved through from when I started this, depending on how much grant funding we were going to give, some staffing funding, and pieces along that. So we have more than enough in our investments to be able to handle this loss or planned deficit for this year. Obviously, this needs to be not the norm,
Well, of course, yeah.
right? That's just
But it's a necessary,
transition
yeah.
as we move from where we were into this more service-oriented line. This will also hopefully give our grantees a little bit of just a small break. They'll receive some funding, but to really remind them that we should not be their only fund.
It's a good, I think it's a reasonable transition.
I know it'll be tough, but we're still here to support them. I just came back actually from the Association of Fundraising Professional Conference that I typically go to. And there was a great deal of conversation. Obviously, I sought it out, but a great deal of conversation about grant funding, which is part of the reason I go every year, is to stay current with that. And with the ubiquitous adoption of AI, what they're seeing in the grant nonprofit world is that it is easier now for organizations to work more collaboratively. With the decrease in federal funds, and federal trickles to state, which trickles to counties, which trickles to other municipalities. With that having been much more volatile, they're seeing nonprofits get creative again, like the nonprofit sector did in the 2007, 2009 recession, where nonprofits who had been reliant on a single source of funding either evolved or went extinct, right? So I think we're in a period of that for those grantees here that were reliant 100% on us. So, again, the other pages, so I'll skip past this if you want to go to the next one.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. This is a little bit more of a detail on the assumptions, which has to do with some specifics. The part that's, I think, more interesting is looking at the district's direct care. The MOUs, these are the grant agreements that are multi-year that were already in place. So the Land Conservancy for our wellness walks, Hospice of the Valleys for their bereavement support programming, Michelle's Place for their cancer resource. Their term ends in 26. We are expecting that we will renew that.
Okay.
I have budgeted for it. That contract will come back in before the board, but we'll provide some information, and we believe that it is a strong program that should be continued.
I agree, but without change or?
Without change, there's going to be some change as far as what they're offering for us, but I think we've learned over the last year
Really a much better they can bring a lot more education and a lot more ability to have some support group services, which we've
Mhm.
seen grow out there
Mhm.
substantially. I also had a conversation with them at this last conference where they had an opportunity for some art therapy from someone who is
Mhm.
already able to do it, is already certified to do it, already experienced at doing that. I'm pointing to and staring
Yeah.
at Teresa because
Yes.
the local connection hasn't been
Mhm.
working out.
No,
So we're thinking we may have another partner that we can bring forward.
yeah.
So again, it's budgeted, but that was just an additional part of that partnership. Again, continuing the partnership with Palomar Family Counseling Services and continuing the project with Skinny Jean Project, who support our DPP, obviously. And then again, I am in the process of renewing the contract with North County Fire, moving their agreement from 200,000 to 100,000. And I've already talked to Chief McReynolds over there about that. So.
And it's just for the next year.
It would be just for 1 year instead of a multi-year, so that we can again revisit it and see
Evaluate,
if
yeah.
it's
Maybe we go back
viable.
up, Maybe we, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what that looks like, right? And then below that is the list of programming estimated. This was all Teresa.
Wow.
So she put a ton of work into identifying those various programs, English and Spanish.
And so there's some redundancy then, yeah?
Yeah, so what you'll see is like, if you scroll down, you'll see DSME in English and Spanish, nutrition in English and Spanish. I chose to leave it as English and Spanish to make a strong point to anyone who's looking at our budget that we are invested equally or as deeply in both as we can.
Oh, I like that.
The nice part about both of the new program coordinators that we're bringing on are both are bilingual,
Oh.
which is wonderful. That'll give us a lot more flexibility for programming.
Yes,
And that better fits our community. So that really, I believe, helps to justify the expenditures and increased expense in district direct care. Okay. All right, we can go to the next one. Again, this is just that obligatory report on employee vacancies. I already read this out on the last, so I don't feel we need to spend a lot of time there. Okay. We'll go to the reserves. Again, I put this in the overall report already, but this just points out what we're looking at here. Same number, 2.5 million that we'll keep in the reserve policy, but this is an official part of the draft budget. And then the final two documents will be put forward at the board meeting, which is the updating the financial reserve policy. And then resolution 476, which we have to do when we update our annual investment policy. So both of those are consistent with what we've already discussed. The investment policy, there are no changes from this year to next year, but it just simply, we changed the date.
okay. And then the reserve policy.
The reserve
No
policy
changes.
just changes those values
Just the
to be in
amounts.
alignment with what the budget amounts are. And that is my presentation on the fiscal year 26-27 draft, the reserves policy draft, the investment draft to date. The only other thing we have is the ACH workflow, which we'll discuss. But before we jump to that, since it's the only thing not budget related, was to see if you had any questions or comments, or if Susan, because I don't think she's had a chance to really see it yet. If anybody has any questions.
I think it's so well laid out. Thank you. For anyone to understand, even me. And I really appreciate that. It seems very transparent. I just strictly not necessarily budget, but I'm just curious from Olga, like what changes, have you made any changes that you feel are significant to to the way that we're.
Oh, I say hold that thought for a second.
Okay.
Something I want to say. Cause there's quite a bit
Oh.
to it,
But I say, let's talk about that ACH workflow, because that really is a big part of the answer to your question. Are you good with that?
Yes. So,
Oh, yeah, Olga. Susan, you'll get your words in a minute.
so yes, I have, a few changes, and it's a work in progress, of course. So, to reduce fraud risk, lower administrative costs, and improve operational efficiency, the district is transitioning from paper checks to automatic clearing ACH payments. Check payments fraud remains prevalent from a form of payment fraud in the United States. I just took another webinar and they were talking about it, and it's still true. So transitional to automatic clearing house, ACH payments provides enhanced security controls and reduced exposure to unauthorized transactions. Talking about cost efficiency as well. The district currently incurs an estimate cost of approximately $1.50 per check, including internal administrative costs, stop time, printing envelopes, postage, so it piles up. The proposed bill pay online ACH service includes monthly subscription of $15 for up to 40 ACH transactions, with additional extra for only 50 cents each. So 41st is free, and any additional one is 50 cents each. This structure is expected to reduce overall payment processing costs. Just talking about the framework for special districts to comply with public agency audit requirements too. Number one is the district will not store vendor banking information internally, which is very important. Number two, all banking details will be entered directly by vendors through a secure system, which even Leslie Seaman managed to do. So it's very user-friendly, not even just for big corporation, and just even for individual vendors, moms and pops for small companies. The district will maintain sufficient documentation to demonstrate authorization, verification, and audit compliance. Now, we do have exception policy for large corporate vendors, which I wanted to highlight. So for certain large corporate vendors, the standard ACH onboarding process through QuickBooks Online is not feasible due to vendors' restrictions on providing sensitive identity information. I was just working with T-Mobile, and they were able to provide the owner's address and owner's names, but they would not do date of birth or social security of this big vendor. So in alignment with the internal controls, our internal controls and data security policies, the district does not collect or store vendor banking information. So for this vendor, payments will be processed using one of the following approved methods. We could do vendor managed secure payment portals, which we could of course set up auto pays to be always on time. Number two, bank initiated payments, which I'm working with our new operational treasurers to make sure we map our ACH into positive pay system with our new operational bank. And number three, some of the vendors, they want to receive check payments. So I have few vendors, including our IT guy who wants to receive traditional checks, including, Juana, the cleaning lady, she wants to receive checks. Yes, all payments will be supported by an approved invoice or billing statements properly coded and recorded in QuickBooks Online, reviewed and approved in accordance with the district authorization policies. So the exception ensures the compliance with internal control standards for audit purposes, protections of sensitive financial information, and alignment with the common practices for large corporate vendors.
So when all is, go ahead, what were you gonna say?
So I was gonna say, what changes has she made? All of that.
Yeah.
Which really, one of the things that I appreciated that she pulled out is that it never even really occurred to me to think about, we're spending $1.50 to write a check. But to send an ACH is cheaper and yet more secure.
Yes.
That has been a long time coming for the district.
And it has been a philosophical change as we've grown our processes. So there's a lot more tightening. Probably the largest change I've seen is this continuity of our conversations between when a bill or invoice shows up to when it's paid and how we're tracking across it. So I've seen that process be much more clean. And I know, Susan, you have some comments as well, so I wanted to make sure I didn't leave anything out there. So if you're good, we'll let Susan, okay.
I want to congratulate you for the first month.
Thank you.
This was her first month doing the general ledger,
Yes.
and it was just flawless. It was organized, and so it was very well done.
It was much less stressful
Oh,
than previous months, and
but don't put an exclamation point in this.
previous bookkeeping emails were always marked as high important.
Oh, really?
Every
One.
which some of us really felt was irritating. Olga doesn't do that, which we, yes,
Oh,
we
man.
appreciate.
Yes.
That's so funny.
She just doesn't, she's got a lot more calmness. She definitely is keeping us like, hey, I need this, I need this. But yeah, it's appreciated.
Yes, I actually, and I want to say that she reminded me about the grant checks. Yes, when it's supposed to be the other way around. So thank you, my dear.
And that was always one of those from one side of the house to the other side of the house, that's communication seemed to have always been challenging. But Olga's really managed to work through QuickBooks and setting up those triggers in a way that really will expedite how we do things here.
Understanding the allocations and the,
She's like, you guys thought you just wanted a part-time bookkeeper, but what you want is full cycle accounting and a whole bunch of other stuff.
You have my master in accounting, that's why.
Right.
It helps a little bit.
Absolutely. Amazing.
We got us a smartin.
It's just such a breath of fresh air.
yes.
So any other parts to that question that,
No?
okay.
That was a good answer, and that was
Yes, we
exactly
also
what I'm
need to
looking
develop
for.
some workflow, how we can pick up checks now
Mm-hmm.
to compliance, to have compliance with our audits, for our audit purposes too.
Right,
we
so
have the
for
whole
example,
workflow, yeah.
we've had some vendors who just wanna come by and pick up a check. And that has always been a haphazard process,
Okay.
an easy way for things to get lost. But Olga's putting in some systems and processes so that when we do have our next audit, there's
The backup documentation and organization. So I've already done an email introduction of both Jess and Olga to the auditors. So that portal, they'll have access to that secure portal to upload things. Because Jess will oversee some facility and touches a lot of other different parts for ADP payroll and such. They'll both be able to work together to make sure that that stuff is sent over to the auditor. Should make for, again, a pretty clean and easy audit. Yeah.
I'm happy.
we are here to serve, that's the point.
You're happy, weird.
Right. So unless you have any changes or questions or comments on budget
Preparation, presentation, this will just move forward to the board next week.
That would be my recommendation.
Great. We will be holding a public hearing before the first part of the meeting. That allows the public to come forward and question, ask, inquire anything about the budget process. Part of the reason we try to make it as transparent as possible so that people can see where their money is being spent.
And then the special meeting that we have on the 27th will be basically what the meeting was last year.
For the grants
With all
only.
the grant,
Yes.
and it'll be general.
It's just for grants and it's just to allocate that $200,000. So yes, I'll need your scoring sheet.
Yes. And I was gonna ask you for if you could.
Print out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm not sure how it's going.
I'm not sure how the board's going on those applications yet.
I've been reviewing.
Sally's like, oh, shoot.
Getting into
So I haven't put pen to paper, but I have been looking at all of the information, so.
I did have a chat with Jennifer this morning on a few other things. And so she was
So
also,
like, oh, yep, digging in. We didn't have nearly as many applications as we've had in the past. I think a lot of folks have been hearing. So it's just, each board member has a different priority on what they feel is most important. So as objective as we try to make it, it's difficult because you're not comparing an apple to an apple, right? We've got an apple, a pineapple, a guava,
Avocado.
that's still a fruit, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Comparing all those things, you serve broadly or you serve deeply. And you seldom have something that serves everybody very deeply. It's just not how services work that way. So it's going to be interesting. This will be the first time Cindy has actually done grants, and it's a very different process from how you guys did it last year. So you and Annabelle have a very different experience. Howard and Jennifer, this is a different experience for them. And they have a lot more history of having done it a different way. But luckily, all of you agreed with this new format, which is really to support the agency, not one specific concrete program within an agency. That should be a good change.
Yeah, are we?
unless you have any other comments, we can adjourn.
Oh, hey, you got something for your pen all over.
What?
Oh, she's got something on my face. Yeah, not on your white sweater. Careful. Oh, you get.
You get ink all over you?